Alright, welcome back. Last time we met the guy, Epicurus, born on Samos, 341 BCE. Kid who got so annoyed at his teachers for not being able to explain a line of Hesiod that he basically said, "Screw it, I'll figure it out myself." Today we go deeper. We're going to talk about why this guy became, in my opinion, one of the most quietly radical thinkers in ancient history. And we're going to talk about the beef, because there's beef, real intellectual beef, with Plato. So picture the world Epicurus is born into. Greek religion at this point is Hesiod. It's Homer. It's gods throwing lightning bolts because they're having a bad day. And people are scared. Earthquakes, storms, death. All of it is the will of some jealous, petty deity who might smite you for basically no reason. That's the psychological water everyone's swimming in. But there's this current running underneath, the pre-Socratics. Dudes going, hold on, what if the earthquake isn't Poseidon being pissed? What if it's just the ground drying out and cracking? That's an actual argument Anaximenes made, and this was dangerous talk. Anaxagoras got run out of Athens for saying the sun was a hot rock and not Apollo's chariot. Socrates got executed partly for the same flavor of impiety. This is the intellectual minefield Epicurus is walking into. And his answer to all of it is, the fear itself is the enemy. Superstition is the disease, and philosophy, real, rigorous, naturalistic philosophy, is the cure. Lucretius, one of his biggest fans, writing centuries later, describes humanity as basically crushed flat under the weight of religious terror until Epicurus went out, mentally traveled the entire universe, and came back with an explanation that stomped superstition into the ground. Now, to build that explanation, Epicurus goes and grabs the atomist toolkit from Democritus. Everything's just atoms and empty space, colliding, combining, that's it. No divine puppet master. But here's the part people miss. Epicurus wasn't just copy-pasting Democritus. Democritus's atomism had two huge problems Epicurus couldn't live with. One, it basically implies you can't trust your senses because things like sweet or red aren't really in the object. That's a straight road to skepticism, and some later Democriteans went all the way there, saying we can know literally nothing. Epicurus thinks that's insane and unlivable. 2. If every future atom collision was locked in since the beginning of time, that's just fatalism with extra steps. Why would you even try to change anything? So Epicurus has to rebuild atomism from the ground up to preserve both trust in the senses and human agency. That's a serious engineering job, philosophically speaking. And then there's Plato. If you want a shortcut for understanding Epicurus, here it is. He is basically the anti-Plato. Plato distrusts the senses. Epicurus says all knowledge starts there. Plato's got an immortal soul getting judged in the afterlife. Epicurus says the soul is just atoms that scatter when you die, so there's literally nothing to fear because there's no you left to suffer. Point for point, these guys are running in opposite directions. This philosophy is intensely personal. Your pleasure, your tranquility, that's the only intrinsically valuable thing. But it's also deeply communal. Epicurus goes to Athens around 306 BCE and sets up what's called the garden. Not a metaphor, an actual school and a genuinely radical one for the time, letting in women and people from every social class. Friendship, for Epicurus, isn't a nice bonus to a good life. It's basically the engine of it. He dies in 271 BCE after 2 brutal weeks of kidney stones, and in his last letter he says the memory of conversations with his friends outweighed the physical agony. That's the whole philosophy in one dying sentence. Then Christianity shows up, and Epicureanism basically goes underground for over 1,000 years. Too atheistic, too focused on pleasure, gets slandered as an excuse for orgies. It doesn't resurface in a big way until the 1600s, when guys like Gassendi and Boyle dust off atomism for the scientific revolution. And that line runs straight through to Newton. So next time, we get into the actual ethics. What does Epicurus mean by pleasure? Because I promise you, it is not what you think.